Estella, I think it's 4:31 according to the clock.
Notice of a workshop of City Commission of the City of Brownsville. Pursuant to Chapter 551, Title 5 of the Texas Government Code, the Texas Open Meetings Act, notice is hereby given that the City Commission of the City of Brownsville, Texas, in accordance with Article 5, Section 12 of the Charter of said city, will convene a workshop on Tuesday, January the 15th, 2013 at 4:30 p.m. in the Commission Chambers on the second floor of Brownsville City Hall, located at 1001 East Elizabeth Street, Brownsville, Cameron County, Texas. Workshop item, presentation and discussion of the proposal submitted by the City of Brownsville for an urban college campus for the University of Texas at Brownsville and the economic impact thereof.
Okay.
We want to go with invocation?
If y'all don't mind, what happens is on the agenda, we didn't state the pledge, but we're going to do the pledge and we're going to do the invocation if everybody is okay with that, even though it's not on the agenda.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible.
Brad, would you be kind enough?
Let's remain standing for the prayer. Father God, we thank you so much for the many opportunities that you've presented to us. Lord, we ask you to lead and guide each of our leaders, each of our citizens. Help us to come in alignment with your plan for the city of Brownsville. Lord, we ask you to have your way in the university as well. Lord, we ask you to bring us all into unity with you and each other. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen. Just so that there's no confusion and make sure that we abide by all the rules of Robert's Rules of Order. Today was a workshop with regards to the presentation and discussion of the proposal submitted by the City of Brownsville for the University of Texas at Brownsville and the economic impact thereof. And it was done at my request and Commissioner Gowan's with the understanding, and I think I've spoken to most commissioners, as to make sure that the public understood what it is that the city has done with regards to requests for proposals. We also have a public comment period, and it's generally having to do with whatever is on the agenda. However, we have some public comment registration forms, all having to do with the smoking ban, and I'm happy to, because of the way that the agenda was written, I think that we should listen to all the comments with a 3-minute limit. But commissioners, I was just going to kind of take a look at, should we take the comments first out of order and go ahead and listen to those, because I think the agenda item is something that probably is going to have some sort of comments from some of the, I have some people here from the university, and I don't know who else who might be here, but anybody who wants to speak about that particular urban campus, we would like to also have their comments. Would you all have any objection to that? Any objection? Okay, and so if we could have the public comment period, Estela, and don't forget, this is a 3-minute limit. public comment period. Appreciate everybody's time. Let me go forward, if I may, with item number A. I think I want to bring everybody up to speed with regards to what happened. If you all recall, TSC and UTB had an agreement to separate the two entities and go forward on their own from, I forgot exactly when that particular item occurred, but it's to go forward and to commence next year, if I recall correctly, the academic year of 2014. When that occurred, we had to figure out, or the community did, try to figure out where the campuses were going to be and how it was going to be divided. The University of Texas went out for requests for proposals, and there was several proposals that were given. One of them included the city of Brownsville. If you recall, back in July, when this whole issue came up on the radar, we as a city arranged for BC Workshop, along with some other entities, design groups from throughout the United States, to have what they call a charrette, which was like a 2 or 3 day period in which people from the community were able to come and talk about what they were looking at insofar as a campus for the University of Texas at Brownsville, more particularly, and of course, in some respects, it was what would also the TSC campus look like. All of which the TSC has got their own board. The University of Texas at Brownsville has the UT system and the Board of Regents up in Austin that actually govern their actions. In any event, in October, I believe, of this past year, we submitted a request for a proposal to entertain the fact that the city of Brownsville would take a look at some properties, and I think we can get an idea. We found out what properties were owned by TSC, what properties were owned by UTB, what buildings were owned by one entity and sitting on the property of another. And I'm going to ask Alan over here from the University of Texas to give you an overview of that in just a minute. Now, all that being said, the RFP that the city submitted with the help of the BC Workshop and, of course, my office staff and Diane Dillard, who was an attorney who was assisted in trying to make sure that we had all the legal aspects of it put together, and who had actually been at the charrette, were all put together, and a proposal was submitted. And Julie, I think here from BC Workshop, who's sitting back there, met me in Austin, and we actually personally submitted the RFP to the University of Texas. In that RFP, we submitted what land was available either by individual owners, and we actually sent out a notice that was posted in the newspaper if any landowners had any property which would be in the proximity of where the campus is presently, to please let us know, and we would submit information to the University of Texas. We also submitted that the property that was owned by the city of Brownsville in that proximity, and it was also submitted. We also submitted an interim plan that if they wanted to utilize any buildings downtown, that we could accommodate them in various fashions by virtue of renovating or updating and leasing at the appropriate time. After that, it came to bear that this University of Texas at Brownsville and the University of Texas at Pan American, and hopefully a medical school merger was proposed, and where a bill is to be submitted to the legislature. We were informed by the University of Texas through their representatives that really, quite frankly, they were trying to look at an urban campus, which is where they're sitting at now, and if they could add additional land to that, and some other alternatives, then they would very likely stay there. There's also an alternative plan that they could go up Highway 7783 Expressway, and there is some property that would be north of where they are now. What we have done is, since that time, I was advised by the Cannon Design Group, more particularly a Peter Ellis, who is an architect, city planner out of Chicago, that in order for them to consider the urban campus wherein they sit, there would be 2 or 3 things that would need to be done. And the first thing was, we need to figure out if TSC is willing to sell some of the properties which would be necessity for them to continue in their present campus, because they have students that are already on those particular buildings, and that the land underneath some of those buildings belong to TSC, but the investment or the building in top were UTB. I advised him that I would be more than happy to do whatever it is that we could do on behalf of the city to help both sides. We are not here to encourage one side or the other. If they feel like they have a necessity for their student bodies or whatever it is that they request, then that's not ours to say. Our say is simply this: we want both institutions to succeed, and we're here to help both institutions to do as they will. All that being said, I have had conversations with Dr. Tercetto, and they seem to be working with the university, and as to where that's going to end up, I don't have any earthly idea. I'm assuming that they will. I see Trey Mendes here and nice to have you here, a board member for TSC, that they will have all that discussion and they will come to a conclusion as to what's best for each institution. The second thing, however, is there is a 17.2 acre plot that belongs to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service that sits on the corner right by the Veterans Bridge, which, according to the Cannon Design Group, says that if they are to stay in that area, they would feel like it's necessary that they acquire that piece of property. In accordance with what they advised me, I met with the U.S. Department of the Interior Fish and Wildlife Service yesterday, and they indicated to me, and I have a letter from that group saying that that 17.2 acreage, they were getting ready to try to figure out how. They don't sell property, they trade or they exchange, and they were already had in process to try to figure out how they could trade that piece of property, and they're more than willing to work with the city and the university and for them to acquire that piece of property. The third thing that they required was that there is approximately, and I think, Alan, I don't know if you've got that piece in your map, but over on the, I say the south side of the expressway, there's approximately 80 acres, somewhere in that vicinity, 50 to 60 acres of which belongs to the city. There's approximately 35 that belongs to, I believe, a gentleman. Well, it's Abraham Golansky, and I think, but he's got other partners in that particular piece of property. We visited with Mr. Golansky on Friday, and he has already sold some property to the university across the street, and he said he's willing to go through that process and would do anything in his power to cooperate with the university so they could acquire title to that property. The fourth thing that they asked us to do was there is a mitigation of odor that's related to a water waste treatment plant that's over there in the southmost area, I believe would be in your district, Commissioner, and that had been brought to the attention of the PUB previously. I happen, as mayor, to sit on the board of the PUB. That was already been on the agenda for this coming year, so I do have a letter of, from the PUB stating that they have already performed the preliminary engineering studies for that work and will be completed within a reasonable time to accommodate the request of the Cannon Design Group. The PUB group, John Brujak, has actually talked to the Cannon Design Group, and they had also, because this is a university that they want to present to not only to the state, but to the world as a 21st century, they have a lot to do with the environmental and the green and the recycling. There is a process which is being implemented in San Antonio, which the Cannon Design Group had wanted to implement at the University of Texas system, and the PUB personnel is presently in contact with the city of San Antonio, and they see no reason at this particular point why they can't implement that requirement should the Cannon Design Group request that and accommodate the university system. That basically is, in a nutshell, what's happening. The other piece of property that is north of the campus, there are several developers, and quite frankly, there is not the infrastructure that we already have in place downtown, but suffice it to say that the university is looking at how they can accomplish that infrastructure, and what they basically want to have for the University of Texas Regents is options that they can consider as to what better accommodates their student body as it goes forward in the 21st century, and assuming also that we'll get a bill passed through and through the legislature for a new university which would have access to public university funds, commonly known as the PUF funds, which would be a terrific boost for the students of the lower Rio Grande Valley. Alan, if I could, let's see if we can identify by virtue of a map what it is that the university owns, what buildings, and what we're talking about in that regard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Commissioners, members of the public. Thank you for this opportunity. Let me just, before I talk, excuse me, explicitly about sites, just clarify a couple of things about the process we're involved in. Actually, Mr. Mayor, the separation in terms of offering classes as two distinct institutions will occur this fall, 2013, in August.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
It's okay. So let me just first tell you and the visitors here what the process is. We're in a very tight time frame because we're looking at legally moving out of Texas Southmost College properties by 2015. That was the legislation that created the separation in the legislature last year. So that means if we're going to build a new campus, we need to get underway this year because it takes 2 to 4 years to purchase, design, construct, and occupy buildings. So we're looking at the fall of 2017. So the Board of Regents, in setting out the request for proposals, indicated that they will endeavor to make a decision at their March 2013 board meeting. So literally within weeks. The process is there's a site selection committee that will provide the regents with background on all the options that are open to us, including staying where we are. So that speaks very much to what you addressed in your opening comments. For all of you, just to remind you, this shows the property in terms of acreage that we currently own and the buildings that are University of Texas buildings exclusively. And just quickly, the Science, Engineering, and Technology building, the Biomedical Research building, which is new and not shown here, is a baby biomedical research building that's being literally constructed as we speak. The Duck Head or Las Tomatas properties, where we at one time talked about creating our athletic zone, but it's a site of 68 acres that is very amenable to being the center of a new campus were we to construct it. the 26 acres right below that that you referenced, and the land that you were talking about that the city owns is across what is now called East University Boulevard. It's across that street. As you know, last year we bought the Casabea student residences. We have the Education and Business Complex and the Life and Health Sciences building. So our choice is, if we want to stay where we are, and if the regents are to be convinced that that's a good option, we need to get on the upper side of 300 acres. Because that, if you look around the country at campuses everywhere, a campus that we're planning for of roughly 20,000 students over the next couple of decades requires that much land. To be in the safe side, we would prefer 400 acres. So you have some options for research parks and other kind of endeavors. Right now, we're at about 110 acres. So we need to add acreage if we're going to expand where we are. There's some other options that were discussed at the charrette about putting some of our facilities literally in the neighborhood we are now, which takes down that acreage count. But we simply can't make the case that we can stay where we are with the land that we own now. It is simply not enough. We're also very concerned, as you mentioned, about making sure our campus is contiguous, that it's connected, that it's property that we control so we can deal with environmental issues, with the flow of students, with traffic concerns. We're trying very hard to develop a campus where there'd be no cars inside the campus, and they would be walkways and bicycle paths and all the kinds of things that we all read about and know about, and through some of your endeavors in the city have been spreading the word about how we can improve our healthy lifestyles. We also are very interested in, and it's very much in the city's favor, because of the synergies that would continue to exist between the city and the University of Texas at Brownsville, were we able to stay where we are. But the bottom line simply is, and I'm not going to be involved in the decision, it's a regent's decision, but we have to make the case to them that we're comfortable with the amount of property that we would be able to purchase and manage for them to build, as they would like to say, a 21st century university campus, because we are very much meant to be the flagship in terms of new innovative ways that higher education would occur in universities in the state of Texas and nationally. And that's, both the president and I have been challenged that they expect us to come up with a plan that they would be exceptionally proud of. So the commitment by the board is there. If the merger goes through, the funds for capital will be there through the Permanent University Fund. So what is finally necessary is for the things that you mentioned to be clarified and brought to the attention of the Board of Regents. I would be more than happy to respond to any question that city commissioners may have.
Alan, just so that the public knows, the empty land East Loop, as I see here, which is 25 acres, if we were to go down from where that picture is,
right,
that's approximately where those 35 acres belonging to the Golonsky Group,
correct,
as well as contiguous to that would be the 50 to 60 acres belonging to the city of Brownsville that the Cannon Design Group says is essential to build the 300-acre campus that you have just talked about. Is that correct?
Correct. And what the conceptual plan is to take Las Tomatas and make it kind of the urban core with other properties, the one you just identified, the potential property that you identified. The other buildings that are there are all somewhat specialized buildings, professional buildings, education, business, biomedical research. The College of Liberal Arts and Sciences and the science facilities would be in those vicinities. And that's where you really need a critical mass so you can interconnect in that area.
Okay. And then the 17.2 acres that, and I've got a letter from the U.S. Department of Interior, Fish and Wildlife. Actually, it's 17.4.
Right.
where that picture is that shows the Casa Bella student residential. Right above that is a kind of a triangle type deal.
Correct.
And that's the area that we're talking about.
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
And beside it is Lincoln Park, which would be a perfect area for some of our athletic activities to occur.
Uh-huh.
So it makes a very nice connection there. And University Boulevard becomes the connector through the whole campus. And that's right on University Boulevard.
But for the purpose of, for the public and the commissioners to know, the Lincoln Park has not been requested by this Cannon Design Group, at least not to my knowledge.
No, and what I'm almost certain would happen down the road were we to decide to stay here, we would try to have some discussions with the city about how we could co-manage it with you or take on responsibility for maintaining it, and in turn for us being able to have intramural sports and some of our competitive sports there.
Okay.
It's a wonderful piece of property too, as you all know.
I invite the commissioners to ask Mr. Artebus any questions they might have, if you do.
I should say, by the way, that President Garcia sends her regrets. She was summoned to Austin today by the Valley Legislative Delegation to talk about the pending legislation before the legislature.
Correct.
I'm hearing most of this information for the first time.
I understand.
So to develop questions pertaining to it is very difficult. I would hope that in the future we're going to be having some discussions, because you're going to be asking the city commission, from my understanding from this presentation, in the future to make a very big commitment. Yet right now we're in a speculative state.
You know, this is all a speculative situation because we have no idea what the University of Texas, this is the first time that they, to be honest with you, Mr. Longoria, the RFP was submitted. We had not heard anything back until about a week or so ago. The circumstances changed from the time that the RFP was submitted. We didn't know whether they were going to ask us to reissue it because of the new university situation. But it was my considered opinion that, you know, no, we're not asking for any particular action today, but I thought it was imperative to try. This is the first that we had knowledge that we were even being considered again. We had no knowledge where they were headed, so that's why we're doing it.
I should just add, because it is a real estate transaction at bottom, this stuff's been pretty confidential. I haven't even seen all the proposals, and I'm the chief operating officer at UTB.
You know.
These kinds of things, because of concerns about people who made proposals about what they would sell land for, and others, they don't want their competitors to see that, so it's all kept very confidential until such time as they make a recommendation through to the Board of Regents, which will also be done in executive session, and then the regents will make their decision and announce it in public session.
You know, I understand that it's very unfortunate that Dr. Garcia couldn't be here today. You know, this community made a very serious investment into the merger. And we have a note that we need to be paying until 2034 in this community. And it's been substantial, and it was a sacrifice that was made. And now I sit here as a commissioner for the city, and I'm being asked, you know, that this is what we need to do so that we can move into the future. Of course, now it's not through a merger with TSC. It's through the university itself coming in, you know, through the transition team, through the discussion team, to your knowledge. Are they looking into some of our TSC property?
Yes, as the mayor indicated, we are actively in negotiations with Texas Southmost College to purchase from them both some land and some buildings.
Okay.
And those discussions are being held this month.
Okay, that was new information to me. That's the
Right.
reason for my question. Another one, I'll ask you, because I probably know I won't see Dr. Garcia. In discussions, and I know that it's probably something, and feel free to let me know if it is executive session items, and that's why it's not being revealed. But in the building of the Universities of the Americas, to be considered throughout the valley, from Brownsville to Edinburgh to McAllen to Harlingen. We've had a long-standing relationship with the University of Texas here in Brownsville as a community. And when I found out that their main offices were going to be in McAllen,
The administrative office.
administrative offices, as a resident of Brownsville, as somebody who's had a relationship with the university over all these years, me personally, I took it as an insult as to why they would go to McAllen, but maybe they have future plans. But I thought that since we've invested heavily into the university system, they're asking us to consider why they would take their administrative offices to McAllen instead of Brownsville.
Well, I'm not going to speak to that one. That's too politically loaded for me, but let me try to reassure you in another way. Since the separation process got underway, the Board of Regents have made two major investments on our campus, purchasing Casabea and purchasing 25 acres of land for approximately $10 million. Secondly, under the process that is underway now, it has been clearly stated to the leadership at the University of Texas Brownsville that the Board of Regents is prepared to invest in building a campus in Brownsville that would be able to develop to a student body of 20,000. So in no way is it abandoning the city or UT Brownsville, as we call ourselves now. And in the new merger, should it occur when the legislation is passed, there will be a major campus here in Brownsville. There'll also be one in Edinburgh. How they put where they put the medical school and the administrative offices has to do with trying to get the valley to speak with one voice as it goes before the legislature. You can figure that out pretty well yourself, but I'm certainly not privy to those discussions. And I think President Garcia's, one of the purposes of her being in Austin today was she was meeting with the valley legislators to see where they could get agreement on where the various parts go. What is not in question is what's going to happen in Brownsville as a minimum, and that's a new campus.
And Commissioner, just for, in looking at this particular proposal, when we were looking at, we did investigate how much money the University of Texas had actually invested in the buildings that they have. And I think at the last count that we had with the BC workshop that I asked them to take a look at, they had a substantially over $130 to $135 million that they had invested since the partnership had occurred. I think everybody has invested heavily. I think it's to everybody's benefit to kind of help everybody succeed. I don't think there's anything sinister about TSC or UTB or anybody else with regards to what has transpired. It's just the nature of what happens as progress is going along, and part of which the city had nothing to do with at this stage. And we're not privy to a whole lot.
Right.
We were asked to submit a proposal. We weren't asked to submit a proposal. We wanted to submit a proposal because I think it would be in the best interest of the city to continue to have them, especially in your district, that I think the building of that university, because most of our students come from a good majority, I think Julie can probably
Right.
speak to that, is we kind of take a look at where the majority of our students come from, and District 1 seems to be providing us with a lot of students. So that was the whole intent of the situation. So, and there's some things that, I mean, it would be nice to have Dr. Garcia here. As a matter of fact, when we tried to set this thing up, it was to accommodate her schedule, but
She just found out Monday
but
she
they,
had to be in
they
Austin,
were
so.
unexpectedly called out, which is no fault of anybody's. But
I would
anyway.
just add for the commissioner's reference, and I know the mayor mentioned this, but it might be useful for those listening as well. One of the other things that the merger proposal is doing, which is incredibly important, is to give the University of Texas at Brownsville access to a $13 billion fund, the Permanent University Fund. In the University of Texas system, every university except Pan Am and except Brownsville has access to that. What does access mean? It's a fund totally controlled by the Board of Regents. It's used for capital. President Garcia and I often sit at Board of Regents meetings as they provide funds for a new building in Austin or in Arlington or in El Paso. So if the legislation goes through, our ability to access those funds and for this region, particularly the city of Brownsville, to benefit through construction dollars and the economic activity that comes from new buildings is immensely changed. Otherwise, we have to go through tuition revenue bonds. We need to raise private sector money. It's very difficult to raise the kind of dollars we would need to build a new campus. So what the Chancellor and the Board of Regents have done is find a way that we'd always been told was impossible to get us in that fund. And that way is to create a brand new university that automatically becomes a member of that club.
And let me explain to the public just a little bit about what that permanent university fund means when you're talking about those billions of dollars. For my entire lifetime, we have struggled and tried to figure out how the university could provide us with those funds. The reason that Pan American, as well as the University of Texas at Brownsville, was never able to receive any of those funds, and why you would stay outside while everybody else is getting money, was because if it was an existing institution and the university attached itself to it, then they were not eligible for the permanent university fund. This idea of building a whole new brand university, when TSC and UTB separated, it now allowed them that opportunity. UT Pan American likewise had the same problem because they were a junior college per se, and then they became a University of Texas. Now you're totally obliterating all of the other structures, not historically or anecdotally, but legally. And so what happens when you have a brand new university system, now this brand new university system is eligible for those PUF funds, just like the University of Texas at Austin, just like the University of Texas at many other, I think
Right.
there's 15 campuses throughout
Right.
the state. So it's actually a fortuitous thing for us to do. Now, how we handle it or how we go about it is kind of, we're kind of at figuring out what we can do to accommodate each other so that we have access to those funds, not for us, but for the students.
Right.
Dr. Ardwas, can you repeat the timeline that the regions are going to be looking at to make this very large decision?
Yes, at the February board meeting, the February meeting of the Board of Regents, the site selection team, which is a group of 10 people from the system and a couple from our campus, will make a presentation in executive session to the Board of Regents, showing them what the options are and providing the pros and cons of each option, the costs, what kind of quantitative numbers go with that option, what kind of qualitative things go with that option. The board will then take that under consideration, and we expect that at the March board meeting, they will make a final decision. So it's within 2 months. And again, just to emphasize, the reason is we need to get our planning very much underway to have a campus open down the road because of the lead time it takes.
I think both institutions need to have that particular
Right.
timeline to make it occur. So I appreciate your time. If no one else has any questions, I appreciate it. Any other comments? I think we'll open it up for anybody that has got any questions.
Thank you.
I just want to make sure, thank you, Alan. I just want to make sure that everybody knows what's transpiring. A lot of this stuff, you know, the request for proposal was submitted. They close it all down. They take it into their executive sessions, and we had not heard anything until last week, at which time they expressed the idea of that 17.4 acres, as well as the other tract of land, as well as trying to figure out what TSC is going to do, which again is not within our province, but also what is in our province, we have done as a city in order to accommodate what we feel would assist the university in continuing to stay in the urban area, which I think everybody, or hopefully the majority of the folks, wish that that would be something that they stay contiguous to the TSC campus, as well as the university, as well as the downtown area, and continue to improve that area for all the citizens of Brownsville. Okay. Yes, Brad.
I think the thing that concerns me and a lot of the other taxpayers of the area is why did the rest of the state snub us concerning the permanent university fund for so long? The entire, I understand the political and the criteria that they went through, but we've been a university for how many years now? Pan Am's been a university for how many years now? And whatever justification they had doesn't stack up to the taxpayers of this city. and this area, or Edinburgh for that
Well,
means. And I know that's not your fault.
No. It's not that it's not my fault. What happens is, we could have probably corrected that, but we would have to have a constitutional amendment. It's not, and it'd have to be a statewide referendum. It's a legal problem that we had because of the wording of the Permanent University Fund, was that it had to go to universities that were established by the university system, as well as the A&M system. The A&M system had the same problem. You had the same problem up there in Kingsville. Because what happens is, if you attach yourself to an existing institution, you weren't eligible. Not because I think anybody had any sinister thoughts about it, but that was the language that was put in that provision, and in order to change it, we had to go to an electorate of the entire state of Texas. And that's what was never, I would assume that my predecessors and other folks within the state of Texas figured that probably wouldn't happen, because everybody wants to have their money.
Yeah.
And we weren't able to do that. So,
Well-
it's unfortunate, and I think all of us here in Brownsville who've been fighting for this have trying to figure out a way. This idea that we now have of having a brand new university merging and trying to do those kind of things, why we didn't think about it before, I don't know.
Well, I'm just amazed that our legislatures from this area haven't fought for that harder already. For how
Well,
many years?
To be honest with you, I think they have.
Okay.
It's just been a difficult process. I mean, anybody who's been involved in this thing for since the merger, 20 years, which I have, we just didn't find the right answer, and I think hopefully this is the right answer, and this would allow us, we learn from our mistakes.
Yes. And also, just moving forward, every part of the state pays taxes, and when any part of the state is paying whatever taxes and then not getting the benefits of
Well,
those
see,
taxes.
this is, the Permanent University Fund is actually an endowment fund that is, they have their oil and gas leases, and so it's not like the money's coming from the entire state. The money's coming from the oil and gas that's coming out of lands that were donated to the university systems. 2/3 goes to the University of Texas, 1/3 goes to the Aggies, and not because they're #1 in the nation, but because they have Johnny Man. Never mind. Anyway, we love the Aggies.
Yeah.
I'm a T-SIP, but we love the Aggies.
Well, and also, I don't know what federal funds may be available for this, but again, until we get to the point where we no longer have to send our tax dollars to Washington, we need to get what we can back from them. And again, I don't know what.
Well, the same federal funding that you get through the university, I think everything is still in play, and I think the Pell Grants are still in play. So that doesn't really change a whole lot. This really changes from a statewide provision, and that's the Permanent University Fund, which again is something that for some of us who've been involved in trying to get that money, it looks like a bright, shiny day,
Yeah.
the day that we're able to stand with the rest of the universities and say, here's my part.
Right.
Hopefully that happens.
Yes, and in the future, I suggest that we do what we can to include our maybe, I'm sure you already have included the legislatures and also our new congressman and new senator from the state, U.S. senator, to see what we can do.
Just so you know, the congressman, I spoke to him this morning. He is in Washington. I just finished speaking with Senator Eddie Lucio, and they're trying to set up meetings with regards to the university as they speak. And so, I think everybody's really trying their very best to try to communicate. To be honest with you, I think everybody is trying to get this thing to happen, but there are some issues with regards to the medical school and how that plays out that's beyond the scope of my political knowledge.
Okay. Well, thank you for your efforts.
Sure. Thank you for your comments.
I could address the federal issue if that would be helpful.
Sure.
One of the things about universities that are important for communities to have some sense of is if I came before city commissioners and said, I have a $7 million a year business that I'm going to bring to your community, and about 95% of that money is going to be spent on people, hiring people. That's what we do every year at UTB in our research operation. Most of that money comes from Washington, D.C. So that is a way federal tax dollars that we all pay come back to this community. The building that's being built right beside the Biomedical Research Building. It's a $4 million building. Every one of those dollars is federal tax dollars. Under the merger proposal, we will be on our path to be what we in our jargon call a Research One university, where we would bring in 4, 5, 10, 20 times that number over the next couple of decades. So I can see the University of the Americas, or whatever it ends up being called, no name's been finally chosen, having research expenditures in the $300 to $400 million a year range up and down the valley, with a good chunk of that being at UT Brownsville. So this does open the doors for more federal access than we've had to date.
Thank you. Like I said, I think the public needs to be aware, and I think that everybody should be kind of dialed in and tuned in. This is a great opportunity, and for us to move forward, talk to your neighbors, talk to your friends. We need this to happen in the worst way. Anything that will enhance the educational components of our young people will do nothing but better this community. So, as we say, we're all in, right? Anything? Anybody else?
Mayor, just one more quick comment. You're the one that's talking to Juliet and to the members and to you've been talking to National Wildlife, all these others. They need to understand that if this community is going to invest into them, they have the upper card. We can go here, we can go there. We have a long history with the University of Texas. This community has invested money. The city has invested money. VCIC has invested money. Everybody's contributed. Now, they need to know that we welcome them. We want them to stay here. And this community is willing to do what it needs to do to keep them here. But by the same token, you know, when the politics starts being played, when the cards start being shuffled and everything, you know, they need to know that the representatives, that the people of the city know, and they need to know that we've invested. They know we've invested. But be serious about what we're doing. We're going to put in, when they come and ask the city, we have no need. We have our own projects that we're doing. I think you've gone above and beyond. I think that the city has gone well above and beyond to accommodate, to help. And that needs to be taken into consideration, strong consideration.
Appreciate it. You know, again, I think it's incumbent upon the city to work with the Congressman Vela, to work with the senators, with the work of the state's representatives, and as well as everybody else. This is a unified community, and I think that we all owe it to one another and to our children and our grandchildren to move forward and to help one another. If not, I will entertain a motion for adjournment, unless we have anything else on the agenda. Okay.
Move to adjourn.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you all very much for being here.